Krishna. So it's going to be time for Bhagavad Gita class now. So please feel free to join if you're staying. Otherwise, yeah. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Gokulananda Radhe Jaya Radha Gokulananda Radhe Jaya Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman 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 Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivraj Ka Acharya Stotra Shatra Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda Ki Jai Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Ki Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. So thank you for staying as long as you can stay. It will be really nice to share some things with you. There's some Bhagavad Gitas behind. We're going to be reading from one of the verses if you'd like to join. They're just there behind. Okay, so before we recite any of the verses, we generally chant one mantra 3 times. It's Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I'll just say it once and then you can repeat the second time. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're reading from chapter 18 of the Bhagavad Gita. And it's text 4 today. Hare Krishna. Managed to find it? Okay. So what I can do is I can read each of the Sanskrit lines line by line, and if you like, you can repeat after me. So, chapter 18, which is the conclusion, the perfection of renunciation. Text 4 starts, Nischayam shrinu me tatra. Nischayam shrinu me tatra. Tyage bharata sattama. Chapter 18, text number 4. That's okay. Would you like a Bhagavad Gita, Prabhu? It's okay. They're just behind there. I can get one for you if you want. Yeah? Yeah, they're just on the shelf there. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. What page is it? Then Prabhu can find it. You managed to find it? Okay, so we'll start that again, just going line by line in the Sanskrit. Nischayam shrinu me tatra. Tyage bharata sattama. Tyago hi purusha vyagra. Trividha samprakirtita. Nischayam shrinu me tatra. Tyage bharata sattama. Tyago hi purusha vyagra. Trividha samprakirtita. Would you like to say it first and then the rest of us will repeat? If you feel comfortable. Otherwise it's okay. Yeah? Go ahead. No. So just the way I led it, you can say the Sanskrit and then we'll repeat after you. Same one, yeah. Nischayam shrinu me tatra. Tyage bharata sattama. Tyago hi purusha vyagra. Trividha samprakirtita. Prabhu, would you like to try? It's okay. Okay, no problem. It's okay? Okay. So just read each of the words' translations. Nischayam, and you can repeat after me. So, Nischayam, certainty. Certainty, the meaning of that. Yeah? Shrinu, hear. Me, from me. Tatra, therein. Tyage, in the matter of renunciation. Bharata Sattama, O best of the Bharatas. Tyagaha, renunciation. He, certainly. Purusha Vyagra, O tiger amongst human beings. Trividaha, of three kinds. Samprakirtitaha is declared. Translation: O best of the Bharatas, now hear my judgment about renunciation. O tiger among men, renunciation is declared in the scriptures to be of three kinds. So we can just say that as well. O best of the Bharatas, now hear my judgment about renunciation. O tiger among men, renunciation is declared in the scriptures to be of three kinds. Okay, so I'll just recite the purport as well. It's quite short, so I can just say that. Although there are differences of opinion about renunciation, here the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, gives his judgment, which should be taken as final. After all, the Vedas are different laws given by the Lord. Here, the Lord is personally present, and his word should be taken as final. The Lord says that the process of renunciation should be considered in terms of the modes of material nature in which it is performed. So before we speak on this verse, I'm just going to recite some prayers to invoke the blessings of our previous teachers who have shared this knowledge with us. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So thank you all for being present here today. Request the blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas here so that we can share something that will be of use. And ultimately, it will be for my own benefit as well. So this verse is part of chapter 18. But before we get to chapter 18, I think it's good to reflect on the previous chapter, which is chapter 17. A lot of chapter 17 talks about the three types of faith. So it's said that any kind of activity we do, whether that's eating, sleeping, charity, any kind of, like work, all of those can be classified in three categories. One is the mode of goodness, one is the mode of passion, and one is the mode of ignorance. So goodness is that which purifies the heart and leads us to more devotion to the Lord. But modes of passion and ignorance are those things which are impermanent and give us material results. And what's the thing about material results? It's things which are temporary. It may give us some level of satisfaction, but ultimately is temporary and very short-lived. So in chapter 18, which is entitled Renunciation, the first verse of chapter 18, Arjuna asks, what is renunciation and what is the purpose behind renunciation? So does anybody have a definition that they want to give about what they think renunciation is? Anything that comes to your mind? Yeah. Yeah. You've given actually the perfect definition of renunciation. So yeah, it's Krishna gives us a bit of a taste of what renunciation is in earlier chapters. In chapter 6, where he says, renunciation is when you're unattached to the fruits of work. So you only work as you're obligated. You're not looking for, actually, if I do this, what am I going to get as a result of it? So Krishna gave us that definition in chapter 6. And so now he brings us back to the topic of renunciation, which is the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita. So it's bringing all of the knowledge that is given so far and culminating in what is renunciation. So in the secular world, a lot of people don't really understand what renunciation is, and they don't really have a concept of renunciation because a lot of it is just, they're so steeped in trying to lording it over the material nature. What can I get from this world? Not what can I give to this world. So there was once a story of a rich businessman. He visited Barbados when he had some holidays from work. So when he was there in Barbados, it's a really beautiful place. And so he decided to hire a boat. There was a boatman who would take him around the islands and show him, where all the good, beautiful places in the island. So as the boatman was, driving the boat, this businessman was just thinking, what a life, he's just driving a boat in this beautiful islands. So then after he started to think, he just asked him, so you do all this day, just drive a boat around these beautiful islands? So the boatman said, yeah, pretty much. And so then he asked, in his business frame of mind, he asked, well, why don't you get another boat? So then the boatman asked, and then what? So then the businessman said, you could buy a few extra boats, you could hire a few people to work on those boats and then make a lot of money. So the boatman asked, then what? So then he said, then you could go international. You could buy boats in different islands, and, in the world's most beautiful places. And so the boatman asked, and then what? And he said, you could become so rich and you could retire and then you could come, to a beautiful island and you could just relax. And then the boatman's like, that's what I'm already doing. So sometimes, we work so hard, we endeavor so much in this world, but ultimately, what is it that we're looking to achieve at the end of the day? This month is a very special month, as you may see. It's entitled the Sangha Seva Sadhana Book Marathon. So this is where we try to share this knowledge out on the streets, where most people don't have the fortune of coming to a temple and understanding what is this knowledge. So we try to go out there and give this knowledge to others. But one of the comments that we get a lot when we're out there distributing some books, one of the taglines it is so common to hear is get a job, because people think actually you guys are just, losers. You've given up on life and you think actually this God business is going to satisfy you. So actually the understanding in the material world is that renunciation is just a frustration, whether that's in career, in relationship, in life. That's what most people understand renunciation to be. It's like when you're fed up, like your career didn't work out, actually, you broke up with your partner, that's when you're going to renounce. But renunciation is so much more than that. That kind of renunciation is a kind of renunciation, but it's a shallow kind of renunciation. It's something that will not last. So after time, what you'll find is those people who do that kind of renunciation will end up looking for some kind of sense gratification again. So real renunciation means to, as you rightly said, to have this kind of disinterest in material things, but not just that, because in order to actually properly renounce, we need to find something to channel our energy towards. So there is a word in Sanskrit called vairagya. Vairagya means detachment, which is quite interrelated with renunciation. Does anybody know what the etymology, so what the word vairagya actually is made up of? In the Sanskrit, vairagya comes from two words, vishesha and aragya. Vishesha means special and aragya means attachment. So detachment, the word in Sanskrit for detachment actually means a special kind of attachment. Now, your parents, So, let's say your child grabbed a knife one day. Now, how is it you're going to take that knife away from the child? Are you just going to wrestle that knife away from it? You're going to explain. Okay, but... Okay, but what if he's like holding on and, he's holding on to the sharp end of the knife? Are you going to just try and pull it and potentially cut the child? What would you do? It's an interesting question, right? It's an example of detachment. Like, how can we let go of the things which potentially may be harming us? So in the case of a child, a really good way to get them to let go of that knife is to give them a toy, something or a sweet or something that they really like, and then they'll let go of something that necessarily doesn't give them as much interest. So in the same way, in order to detach from these material things, we have to understand what is it that we need to attach to, and that ultimately is Krishna consciousness. So I recently heard a really nice definition of renunciation. Renunciation is not a function of frustration, it is a fruit of realization. And I thought this really summed up what renunciation is really about. So in this chapter, as I mentioned, Arjuna starts by asking, what is renunciation? What is the purpose behind it? So interestingly, in verse 2, Krishna starts by saying, some learned men say, and then he describes that it's the giving up of activities, as you described, based on a material desire. And then, the second definition he says is, others say that is giving up all kinds of fruitive activities. And then in text 3 goes on to say, other learned men say that certain things shouldn't be given up. So he gives 3 examples of things that we shouldn't give up. And that is sacrifice, charity, and penance. And then Srila Prabhupada in text 2 comments that those things that we shouldn't give up are the sacrifice for the purification of one's heart or for advancement in the spiritual science should not be given up. So he gives a very clear distinction of what we shouldn't give up. But then we go back to what Krishna says in this text, in text 4. So he says, now hear my judgment, And it's really interesting that there is this word shrinu me in the verse. So shrinu me is translated as hear from me. Why is this important? As we saw in the earlier verses, Krishna is saying, some men say this, some men say that. And in this material world, we constantly hear, scientists say this, scientists think this, perhaps it might be this. And Srila Prabhupada commented on this, that, scientists, one day they'll come up with a theory and they say, this is how the world started, how it was created. And then, 10 years later, there'll be another theory. But they're all theories, and there's no way that, that has a solid basis, because every once in a while a new theory comes up. So that's why it's really important we do Shrinu Me, hear from the Supreme Lord. And interestingly, Srila Prabhupada comments on a similar verse, chapter 7, text 1, where he uses the similar words, Tach Shrinu, which also means hear from me. And that is one of the most commented verses from Srila Prabhupada. There's 21 lectures that Prabhupada spoke on that particular verse, which goes to show how important it is to hear from the right people. So, in terms of the process of devotional service, there's Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, etc. The whole process starts from Shravanam. Shravanam means to hear. And that's why it's really important that we hear from the right person. Now, in chapter 7, Krishna says, no one can be a greater authority than me. So he declares that actually, there's no other truth beyond him. And it's in text 7 of chapter 7, he says, there is no truth superior to me. So by hearing from him, Prabhupada comments, by hearing from him, we can become perfectly Krishna conscious. Isn't that nice? Isn't that something that would be good for all of us, to become perfect in our lives? So, this is really important so that we can overcome these tendencies. Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining. What else does Krishna say about renunciation? So in the next few verses, so in the verses that will come, tomorrow, day after, he will start to reveal more of the secrets around renunciation. So I don't want to give away all the secrets. It would be nice for you to hear those things as well. But just to give you a bit of a taster, in this verse, he outlines that renunciation is of three kinds. So there's renunciation in the mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. So I gave examples of, renunciation in the modes of ignorance and passion where it's very artificial, we're frustrated with life. Those are the kind of renunciation that will be very short-lived and will seek some kind of happiness again. Real renunciation comes from real vision. So to understand actually what is the world and how can I see things from perspective. So, in the secular world, real vision is described as having 20/20 vision. But spiritual vision goes way beyond that. Spiritual vision means to see through the eyes of Scripture. So to become something called a Shastra Chakshush. So actually hearing from Shastra, hearing from the Scriptures, is actually a form of seeing. And how can we develop that more and more? So hearing is absolutely the first step. But the more way we can do that is actually to serve. So recently one devotee was sharing a story with me. His name was Godruma Prabhu. So back in the day, they used to, again, as I mentioned, devotees go out on book distribution. So they were up north in the country, and they came across this one individual. So they shared a book with him, and he took the book. And so then he said, as he was sharing the book and the knowledge, he was saying, we're monks, we're trying to share this knowledge. So the individual was like, he was very skeptic. He's like, you don't look like monks. I don't really believe that. So he said, no, we're really monks actually, And then Godruma Prabhu was saying, you know what, come to our motorhome where we're, staying, and I can show you that actually we are real monks. So this individual came to the motorhome because they were traveling, and the moment the door opened, there was this strong smell of incense. So he's like, okay, so I'm starting to get this vibe, maybe you are monks. And then they saw the altar in the motorhome. Then you could see that was very austere. It's like, okay, these guys, maybe there is some element of it. But then he saw something that kind of hit him. He saw, as devotees, sometimes devotees put up shlokas, verses from the different scriptures. So he came across one verse and he just started to read it. And then he said, whoa, this is serious stuff. If I read, am I going to be affected like this? And it was actually a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, from Prahlad Maharaj. And in that verse, it starts, Sukhaya Dukkha Mokshaya. So in that verse, it says, we're all trying to reduce our distress in this world and increase our happiness. But the moment we start our activities for happiness, then automatically the conditions of distress begin. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai, Sitaram Lakshmana Hanuman ki jai, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai. The moment we start our activities for happiness, then automatically the conditions for distress come. So then he started to think, this is so true. Every time I endeavor for happiness, distress is always around the corner. So, one of the things I like to share with people that if you're in a very distressful situation, then don't worry. Some happiness will come. But similarly, if you're in a very happy situation, then don't worry. Some distress is also around the corner. So they go hand in hand, and we just have to be really, really careful that actually, what is it that we're seeking? Because if we're seeking happiness, then automatically we're going to get distress from it. So I also want to share some practical things around renunciation that we can do. And through these practical things, the perfection of renunciation is given by Dhruva Maharaj. He was in a very distressful situation because of his father. He didn't get quite the attention that he was seeking, and then he resolved that actually I'm going to pray to the Lord that I get a bigger kingdom than you, bigger position, bigger wealth, all these kind of things. And so he really started to pray earnestly. And then through his prayers, ultimately he was able to achieve the Lord, and the Lord appeared before him. And what was Dhruva Maharaj's response when he saw the Lord? He actually said, I've been seeking, these jewels, but actually I do not wish to ask for anything more, because just by seeing you, I feel completely satisfied. So that is real renunciation, and that is like, the epitome of what renunciation means, because that's when we, as you were saying at the beginning, we don't have any desire for any material, whether it's wealth, position, all these kind of things. So in Monday's class, I thought there was a really nice thing shared from that class. It was a 4-step question in terms of how we can start to purify our desire, because we all have material desires. Even as devotees being in the movement for so long, you find that actually there are still a lot of desires within. So how can we start to purify these? So the 4 questions that were raised, and this is from Keshav Maharaj's book, Gita 3, which I highly recommend. It's such a practical book. So in that, Keshav Maharaj describes 4 questions that we can ask ourselves. So the first is, what is it that you identify yourself with? What are your attachments? Are you looking for position, some kind of ability, or some kind of possession? What is it that we're really drawn to? And then the next question is to ask, why do you like this so much? What is the motivation behind it? So in this way, we start to become more and more self-aware about what are the desires that are within our heart. Next, we can ask, how can this thing, position, ability, whatever it is that we desire, if it were to be taken away from me, or has been taken away from in the past, how does that play out? If it's a house that you want, if it's a relationship, if it's a car or something, what would happen if it were to be taken away? Then you start to kind of think about the consequences. And then finally, the 4th question was, what could be a more spiritual version of this desire? So just to give one of my desires, which I had, I desired to get an electric car for some time, and Krishna willing, I managed to get one. So I was just thinking, how can I engage this? Ultimately, it's a material desire, like it's a fancy car. So I was just trying to think, how can I engage this? So how can I use this in Krishna's service? So trying to take devotees as much as possible using the car. If there's service needed, like transferring Bolga or something like that, then that's it's a good example of how we can start to engage this. So it's just a very small, perhaps silly example, but it's just an example of how we can start to dovetail these desires that we have in our heart. And Prabhupada said, even as when you come into Krishna consciousness, it's not that these desires suddenly just disappear like that. Just like a fan, if you were to press the off button, the fan is still running, even though it's off. So it takes a while before all those desires are completely eradicated from the heart. So I found this 4 steps to be a really nice way of where we can start to, first of all, become more self-aware about what's in our heart, and then to dovetail that to become more spiritual. So that was kind of the first practical thing, how we can start to practice renunciation, and this is kind of in the mode of goodness. The next was starting to understand the more subtle aspects, so the anarthas that we have, so things like pride, adoration, distinction, which are described as subtle sex desire. These are the sort of things that are much more harder to uproot from our hearts. There was an analogy of a billionaire, so this very poor person, he approached a billionaire, so he thought, actually, I can ask for anything I want, but in his plight, he was thinking, what is it that I really need? And he just needed some food. So he went up to the billionaire, he's like, can I have some food? And the billionaire said, okay. But he could have asked for anything from the billionaire. Billionaire was actually willing to support him, but all he asked for was food. So sometimes it's like that when we approach Krishna, who is the ultimate proprietor of everything. We approach him for the most mundane things, like I was describing for the car, like he can give anything in this whole entire world. He can give us eternality, knowledge, bliss, and we approach him with the most mundane things sometimes, you know. So it's just about asking, what are we approaching the Lord with? What is the desire in our heart? What is my shelter? Even when we do devotional activities, it's always good to ask the question, what is my motivation behind doing this? You know, sometimes when I come for morning program, get the opportunity to serve by either singing or worshipping Tulsi Devi or something like that. And then sometimes, you know, like somebody may say, you know, I saw you on morning program, you were singing. And, you know, there's that element of pride. Yeah, I was, you know. I was on, people were watching me. So it's like the next time you come for the service, are you doing it because somebody might be watching? Are you doing it because you get to stand in front? You know, everyone's eyes are on you. Or is there a more spiritual, more purer motive behind that? Kesha Maharaj was recently sharing in a class around what is renunciation. So before he gave that class, this was back in the day when Shruti Dharma Prabhu was around. So he used to serve Shruti Dharma Prabhu when he was not so well. And so one time, before he was just before he was about to give class, he asked Shruti Dharma Prabhu, "Is there anything you'd like me to share with the audience?" So Shruti Dharma Prabhu had a think, and he wasn't really speaking much at the time. So he just said a very cryptic thing. He said, "What is going on in the background?" So Kesha Maharaj was there, and then Shruti Dharma Prabhu's carer was also there. And so they were both like, that's very deep, but at the same time, I'm not quite sure what you're trying to say, Shruti Dharma Prabhu. So Kesha Maharaj asked Shruti Dharma Prabhu, what are you trying to say with this? Are you trying to say that, you know, actually externally we may be doing a lot of things, but in the background, what's going on in our minds? And so Shruti Dharma Prabhu said, yes, exactly that. So again, it just points to that actually externally, we may be doing things, we may be coming to the temple, we may be doing service, we may be reading, we may be chanting, but what's going on in the background? So these are the sort of things that, you know, we should really try to work on in terms of renunciation. What is those subtle things that are preventing me from really serving? Because ultimately through service, it is how we can develop this mentality of pleasing Krishna. You know, another example of sometimes if you brought somebody to the manor or to Krishna consciousness in general, we may think, you know, I made this devotee. You know, that again, that element of pride may be there. But an example from Shastra that completely contradicts that is Advaita Acharya. You know, he brought the Lord down in his form as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So can we say actually, you know, like even in terms of qualification, Advaita Acharya Prabhu was almost like his spiritual master. You know, he's the one who invited the Lord to come. So do we say actually Advaita Acharya was the master? No. Advaita Acharya would constantly say, you know, I am the servant of your devotees. So yeah, we can see that actually even when we do manage to perform really wonderful achievements in Krishna consciousness, a lot of the time it's mercy. It's not just through our own endeavor. So that's what we can really try to renounce, these subtle anarthas, the aspects of pride, adoration, distinction, profit, you know, all these kind of things which on a gross level are not such a big thing, but they're the ones which are really hard to uproot, and they're the ones that really prevent us from serving purely. So that's what we should really try to do, is develop this mentality of serving and pleasing Krishna, because that is what real renunciation is. So that's what I wanted to share today. Just wanted to ask if there was any questions or any comments, corrections. Any reflections as well? Anything that you felt you found resonated? It's it's a fairly new book. It's been released in the last year. I think it should be available from reception. So in a similar way to how the Gita is structured, there's the 18 chapters. But what Keshav Maharaj does in that book is reflective exercises, questions we can ask based on what Krishna gives as knowledge. and that allows us to apply, because it's described in the Shastra, there's a 3-step process to going deeper in knowledge. So Shravanam is the first stage, hearing from scripture. Then the next stage is Mananam, which is contemplation. So that's what I feel this book is really helpful for. It helps us to contemplate, what is it that I've heard, what is it that I'm reading. And then the third step is Nididhyasan. And that means to actually apply what we've heard and contemplated and reflected, that actually this is something that I can make a change. And that's ultimately what really brings about transformation in the heart. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur actually adds a fourth process to that, fourth stage to that process, and that's Vandanam, which is to make a prayer. And that's also really powerful, because as we understand, there's 2 aspects that are needed for any progress that we make in spiritual life. It's our own endeavor and also the mercy of the devotees and Krishna. So Vandanam attracts that mercy. So to your question, that book is really good. I believe it is available in reception. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Jai Hare Krishna. And
People not coming to classes, I don't understand, which is so much, it's just offered, like it's far, and that's what it's meant.
I, okay. That was your sister. Right. No, it was nice that, it's really nice that people come. Your question was, why are more people not coming? To give people the benefit of the doubt, it's also now getting colder, and it's also quite dark, so the motivation to venture outside the house when you've got the comforts in your home is definitely more challenging. It is, yeah. But thankfully, there is also now the facility that these are all streamed online. So for those who, as you say, it's more difficult, it's quite a distance for people to come, then people can tune in online as well. So we've got quite a few people generally tuning in online and hearing these classes. But yeah, exactly. Yeah. But having said that, it's also in this age, it is said people are lazy, misguided, unfortunate, and so a symptom of not actually attending is sometimes can just be laziness. And I speak for myself. I live less than 15 minutes away, and how many times do I come in the evenings or the mornings, for that matter? I could definitely be coming more, but ultimately we're lazy. Yes.
It's so hard, and then could be again reason we're just tired.
Yes. Yeah, it's difficult. People are working, and then where do you find that energy to come and sit in a Bhagavad Gita class after that?
So much energy.
Mm. Mm.
And it's very also interesting what you said about what's at the background, why you're
Yeah.
here. If you ask me why I'm here, I don't know why I'm here.
Mm.
Just got this kind of I wanna go.
Yeah. But that's powerful. Sometimes that's Krishna's arrangement. We all have Krishna in the form of Paramatma in the heart. So sometimes, when we do a spiritual activity where we don't know where that motivation has come from, that's Krishna pulling us. So it's nice that you decided, whether through conscious choice or otherwise, to come. Just being in front of Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda is so powerful. And then on top of that, if we get an opportunity to read from the Bhagavad Gita, to hear some reflections, and also to just share your own reflections, I think that's one of the things that makes being here so much more powerful than just hearing a class online. Because Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It starts when you just, pass the gates.
Yes, yes. It's a bit of a paradox, like when we hear, we feel like such a strong sense of, yeah, this is the right thing to do, and I feel so inspired, and then the moment we step out, it's like, how do we keep that going? So it's a constant challenge. Any reflections from you, Prabhu? Anything you? Yes. Yes. Okay. Well, really appreciate you being here. Say again? No, honor is mine. Yeah, thank you for being present and sharing your reflections as well. It was nice to hear from you. So in 10 minutes the Darshanarti will open again. But yeah, in the meantime, if you want to do kirtan or anything, please do. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
understand? Okay, I'm going to sing this song to Lord Chaitanya. So first I'll sing, then you repeat. Yeah? Kiba Jaya Jaya Gauran Chande Aroti Ke Sobha Kiba Jaya Jaya Gauran Chande Aroti Ke Sobha Janavi Tatavani Jagamanalobha Janavi Tatavani Jagamanalobha Jake Nitai Chan Vamegadadara Jake Nitai Chan Vamegadadara Advaitasini Vata Chattatara Sridhanje Advaitasini Vata Chattatara Hate Gaurachan Ratna Simasane Vase Hate Gaurachan Ratna Simasane Aroti Korenga Brahma Adi Devagane Aroti Korenga Brahma Adi Devagane Naradi Adi Gore Kamaladulaya Naradi Adi Gore Kamaladulaya ganta baje baji karatala Santa baje ganta baje baji karatala Madhura mridanga baje paramarasala Madhura mridanga baje paramarasala Santa baje ganta baje madhur 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 baje Santa baje ganta baje madhur 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 baje Madhur 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 baje Madhur 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 baje Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Bahu koti chandra jini vadana ujwala Bahu koti chandra jini vadana ujwala Kala desvana mala kore jalamala Kala desvana mala kore jalamala Shiva Sukha Narada Preme Gada Gada Shiva Sukha Narada Preme Gada Gada Bhakti Vinoda Dekhe Gaurara Sampada Bhakti Vinoda Dekhe Gaurara Sampada Jaya Jaya Gaura Chande आरती के शोभा जानवी जाता वाणी जटा मनलोभा गौरंगे आरती शोभा जगा जाना मनलोभा गौरंगे आरती शोभा जगा जाना मनलोभा नित्य गौरा हरि 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 नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रसाय भूतले श्रीमती भक्तिवेदांता स्वामी नित्यानामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी भक्तचारि प्रचारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Recite some prayers. Everyone can do their pranams, and after each prayer you can say Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Pairajakachacha A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Pairajakachacha Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki. Anatikoti Vaishnavinda ki. Namachashra Haridas Thakur ki. Prem Chakor Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda ki. Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki. Mayapur Vrindavan Dham ki. Nilachara Jagannath Puri Dham ki. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi ki. Ganga Devi Ramu Devi ki. Harinam Sankirtan ki. Samveda Bhaktavinda ki. Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Oh, Nitai, all glories humble devotees, all glories humble devotees, all glories humble devotees, all glories Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. So everyone can sit down for 5 minutes, going to pray to Lord Nrsimha for protection.
Namaste Narasingaya Praladaladaine Hiranyakashipurvakshaha शिलातंका न खालाए इतो नरसिंहो परतो नरसिंहो यतो यतो यामि ततो नरसिंहो बाहिर नरसिंहो हृदये नरसिंहो नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपद्ये तव करकमलवरे नखाम् अद्भुतशृङ्गाम् दलिता हिरण्यकशिपो तनुभृङ्गाम् केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा श्रील प्रभुपदा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा जय गुरुदेवा श्रील गुरुदेवा निताय गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौरा हरि बोल नरसिंहदेव भगवान की प्रहलाद महाराज की श्रील प्रभुपाद की गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि